I lost everything I cared about and didn't even see it coming. Family, friends, my whole life, shattered in one night because of his betrayal. He thought he'd have the last laugh, but that's when I realized I wasn't just going to sit back and watch him get away with it. What happened next changed everything. But let's start from the beginning. The thing about Reggie Mad Dog Turner, he wasn't just another washed-up fighter. He was the kind of guy you crossed the street to avoid, built like a wrecking ball with a personal vendetta, covered in faded scars from fights no one remembered, and carrying a reputation that made even the toughest guys hesitate. At 32 years old, Reggie should have been at his peak. He should have been coaching younger fighters, getting paid to do commercials, maybe running a gym or something. Instead, he was a walking disaster. The underground fight scene had been his playground, a place where rules didn't exist, and neither did mercy. He'd take a fight against anyone, anytime, just for the thrill of watching another man crumble under his fists. But here's the thing about being the toughest guy in the room. Eventually, you run into someone tougher. And when that happens too many times, your name stops meaning something. Your body starts falling apart. Reggie had lost that war. Too many hits to the ribs, too many nights waking up on locker room floors, too many people realizing he wasn't the monster he used to be. He got banned from pro boxing after a particularly bad stunt in the ring, something about a headbutt that nearly ended a guy's career. After that, no manager would touch him, no promoter would book him. The only fights he could get were in places with sticky floors and unpaid bets. And if there was one thing Reggie hated more than losing, it was being forgotten. So now, he was just angry. Angry at the world, angry at the people who left him behind, angry at the fact that he had nothing to prove anymore because nobody cared. And when a guy like Reggie has nothing to lose, he makes sure everybody else does. Enter Deshaun King. Now, Deshaun was a different beast entirely. 40 years old, ex-military, built like someone designed him in a factory for the sole purpose of wrecking anyone dumb enough to try him. But Deshaun wasn't the kind of guy who went around proving it. He had nothing to prove. His job as a security guard at the Royal Lancaster Hotel was simple: keep guys like Reggie from ruining rich people's evenings. And yeah, he'd seen it all before. Drunks, tough guys, wannabe fighters, dudes who thought security was just a fancy word for punching bag. But Reggie? Reggie was a special kind of stupid. The moment he stumbled into the gold-trimmed, overpriced lobby, you could tell he was looking for a problem. Eyes glassy, steps unsteady. That weird energy a guy gets when he's one bad thought away from throwing a punch at the first person who breathes wrong. And the second he saw Deshaun, it was over. Reggie hated guys like Deshaun, the ones who stood tall, unshaken, untouchable, the ones who made him feel like he was small. Deshaun wasn't a loudmouth. He didn't try to act tough. He just was. And that drove Reggie insane. The first mistake. Reggie staggered up. His breath reeked of bad decisions, and the second he opened his mouth, Deshaun already knew where this was going. "Yo, tough guy," Reggie slurred, weaving on his feet like a punch-drunk rookie. "What's it like being a glorified doorman, huh? Bet you used to think you was some kind of big shot." Deshaun didn't even blink. No irritation, no reaction. Just that same calm, unreadable expression. Like he'd already seen the ending to this story, and it wasn't even worth the effort. That alone made Reggie's blood boil. Guys like him needed reactions. They thrived off it. Fear, anger, even annoyance. Anything to prove they were getting under your skin. Deshaun? Nothing. Reggie stepped closer, his signature grin twisting his face into something animalistic. "What? Too scared to talk?" he sneered. "I know your type, ex-military, right? Big guy, walks around like he's still in the trenches. But you ain't nothing, bro. You ain't never been in a real fight." Deshaun exhaled. No anger, no challenge. Just a simple, bored-sounding, "Go home, man." That was the second mistake, because Reggie Turner wasn't the kind of guy who took orders. And if there was one thing he hated more than anything else in the world, being ignored. His fists tightened, his vision narrowed. And before his brain could even process the stupidity of what he was about to do, his fist was already flying. If there was one thing Reggie Turner knew, it was how to throw a punch. Didn't matter if the guy was bigger, stronger, faster, Reggie always made it count. His fists had broken bones, sent guys sprawling, turned careers into cautionary tales. But right now, he was hitting air. A swing and a miss. Reggie's right hook shot forward, aiming for Deshawn's jaw, the kind of punch that could knock a man out cold. But before it even got close, Deshawn was already gone. Not a flinch, not a retreat. Just gone. Reggie's knuckles sliced through nothing. His balance wobbled, his breath hitched, and that half second of realization hit harder than any punch ever had. Then came the impact. A sharp, brutal, unforgiving impact. Crack. Reggie didn't even see it happen. 1 second he was standing, the next his head snapped sideways. A shockwave of pain detonated through his skull, like someone had swung a sledgehammer straight into his jaw. His legs gave out, his vision blurred, and for the first time in his life, he felt small. The stumble back. Everything inside him screamed to recover. He had taken hits before, worse ones. Ones that cracked ribs, ones that left him coughing up blood in locker rooms. But this wasn't just a hit. This was a message. And Deshawn, he wasn't done. Before Reggie could even lift his arms, another shot came. Thud. A strike to his ribs, fast and clean, like a piston firing straight into his core. His lungs locked up. A rush of air escaped his lips in a strangled gasp. And still, Deshawn wasn't sweating. No wasted movement, no flashiness. Just cold, precise destruction. Reggie hated it. He was used to fights being messy, brutal, full of rage. But Deshawn fought like he was taking out the trash. The crowd watches the fall. The lobby was dead silent. The kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. People were watching, their wide eyes locked onto a legend crumbling in real time. Phones came out. Screens glowed. The world was recording history. And Reggie felt it. That sick, suffocating feeling. Humiliation, creeping in like poison. This was different from losing a fight. This was being exposed, but he still had one last move. The desperation play. Reggie knew when a stand-up fight wasn't an option. Fine. Time to go primal. With a snarl, he lunged. Not for a punch, not for a kick. For Deshawn himself. If he couldn't land a clean shot, he'd drag him down. Turn this into a scrap, a street fight, something raw and dirty where technique didn't matter. But the second he went in for the grab, Deshawn moved. Fast, too fast. And suddenly, Reggie felt the entire world shift. A grip clamped down on his shoulder. A force twisted his momentum, and before he could react, the ground rushed up to meet him. Boom. Marble meets skull. The hotel lobby floor wasn't made for mercy. Cold, unforgiving. And now, painted with the imprint of Reggie's face. The impact rattled through his bones. His jaw clamped shut. His vision exploded with white-hot stars. And then silence. No shouting, no movement. Just the sound of breathing. His. Deshawn's. And then, everyone else's. A moment of realization. Reggie's body refused to move. Every nerve in his system was ringing like a broken alarm. He tried to push himself up, but his arms weren't working. He tried to speak, but his jaw wasn't listening. He tried to pretend this wasn't happening, but then Deshawn crouched down next to him, not gloating, not celebrating, just watching. His face calm, controlled, like a man who had nothing to prove. "You done?" The words weren't mocking. They weren't angry. They were just flat, like he had just handled a minor inconvenience, like Reggie was nothing more than a task to check off the list. And that hit harder than any punch ever could. The internet remembers everything. The gasps came first, then the whispers, then the clicks. Phones lifted, screens flashed. The whole world was about to see this. A former champion, a street legend, a man who had once ruled with his fists, face down, broken, beaten. And this would follow him forever. But as that thought clawed its way into Reggie's brain, something else started boiling up. Something that had been there since the very first punch. Reggie Turner wasn't just humiliated, he was furious. And when Reggie got mad, somebody always paid the price. Reggie Turner had been knocked down before. He had lost fights, taken hits, stumbled out of rings with bruises that lasted for weeks. But never like this. Never with an entire crowd watching, recording, and whispering about how the great mad dog just got put down like a stray. The moment he hit that marble floor, reality came crashing down on him harder than any punch ever had. It wasn't just a loss, it was humiliation. And humiliation was worse than pain. The sound that changed everything. At first, it was just one or two chuckles, soft, barely noticeable. Then came the murmurs, the rustling of bodies shifting, people leaning in to whisper, and then the glow of screens, phones lifted, cameras rolling, recording, sharing, spreading. Reggie felt his stomach twist. This wasn't just a bad night anymore. This was about to be everywhere. Tomorrow, maybe even sooner, his name would be trending for all the wrong reasons. Former champion gets wrecked by hotel security. The night the mad dog got put to sleep. Reggie Turner, when tough guys meet reality. The thought made his blood boil. His jaw ached. His ribs screamed. But none of that mattered. He couldn't let this be the story. He couldn't let this be the last thing people remembered about him. And then he heard it. A laugh, louder than the rest. Some guy in the back, not even trying to hide it. And just like that, Reggie snapped. Rage takes over. His body moved before his mind could catch up. He pushed himself up way too fast, his limbs shaky, his breath ragged. But the pain didn't matter. The laughter did. His lip was busted. His face was throbbing. But all he could think about was erasing that smirk off every face in this room. He barely registered Deshaun standing there, still calm, still in control. Didn't matter. This wasn't a fight anymore. This was war. Reggie charged, not like a boxer, not with precision, footwork, or strategy. This was pure, wild, unhinged rage. He swung without thinking. Deshaun sidestepped, swung again, missed, again, missed. The rage in Reggie's veins turned white hot. He was losing control, his body reacting instead of planning. Deshaun? Deshaun was just watching, like he had already figured out how this ended. And that made it so much worse. A dangerous idea. Reggie's breathing was heavy now. His fists clenched so tight they shook. Deshaun was too fast, too disciplined. Reggie couldn't land a hit. So, change the game. His hands found something solid, a marble ashtray, sitting on one of the nearby lobby tables. Heavy, cold, perfect. He didn't think. He just swung, the moment everything changed. Deshaun moved at the last second. The ashtray missed his head by an inch, slamming into the floor with a sickening crack. The entire lobby erupted. Gasps, screams. Chairs scraped against the floor as people backed away fast. This wasn't just some drunk guy throwing a tantrum anymore. This was a crime. But Reggie didn't care. He didn't care about the security cameras, didn't care about the fact that he had just turned a stupid mistake into something way worse. Didn't care that the second police got here, this was going to be more than just an embarrassing video. He just wanted to see Deshaun hurt. One last shot. He tightened his grip around the largest shard of marble from the broken ashtray. One more swing, one more shot. He lunged, missed, swung again, missed. And then Deshaun caught his wrist. The fear hitch. It happened too fast. 1 second, Reggie was the one attacking. The next, he was frozen. Deshaun's hand locked around his wrist like iron, unshakable, unmoving. And for the first time since this started, Reggie felt real fear. Because Deshaun wasn't dodging anymore. Deshaun was done playing. Reggie Turner had spent his entire life making other men feel small. He had built a career off of his fists, off of fear, off of the raw, unfiltered violence that made people afraid to even look him in the eye. But now he was the one on the ground. Face down, arms twisted behind him in a grip so tight he could feel the tendons in his shoulder screaming. And for the first time in his life, he couldn't move. Not because he didn't want to, not because he was too weak, but because he knew. If he even tried, Deshaun would snap him in half. The unshakable man. Deshaun hadn't said a word, not when Reggie charged at him, not when he swung with everything he had, not even when he grabbed that ashtray and tried to take his head off. He had just handled it. Effortlessly, Like this wasn't even a real fight. Like Reggie was nothing more than a problem to be solved. And that made it so much worse. Because Reggie had spent his whole life fighting guys who lost their tempers, who let their anger dictate their moves, who let their emotions make them sloppy, slow, predictable. But Deshawn fought like a machine, like a man who had already won before the fight even started. The silence that changed everything. Reggie could hear his own breathing, loud, shaky, desperate. The cold marble pressed against his cheek, his body still locked in place, and the world around him had gone completely still. No one moved, no one spoke. The people in that hotel lobby had just watched something unreal. They had come in expecting a drunk troublemaker throwing a tantrum. And instead, they had just witnessed a legend fall, a man reduced to nothing. The moment of realization. Reggie had always thought he was untouchable. Even on his worst days, even when his body ached, even when he lost, he had never been outclassed. Until now. Until this exact moment. Pinned to the ground like a rookie who didn't know how to fight. Powerless. Completely at someone else's mercy. And Deshawn was barely even trying, the sirens that sealed his fate. Then, the sound, faint at first, distant but growing louder. Sirens, police sirens, the kind of sirens that meant it was too late to fix this. That meant somebody had already made the call. And now there was no getting out of it. Reggie felt his stomach drop, because this wasn't just a fight anymore. This was the end of everything. The words that broke him. He barely even noticed when Deshawn shifted, didn't realize the man had leaned down, until he felt that low, calm voice right next to his ear. "I've seen real monsters, man." The grip on his arms tightened. Reggie barely swallowed the pained grunt that threatened to escape. You're just a sad little dog that don't know when to stop barking." The collapse of a fighter. Reggie's whole body sagged. It was like those words had taken the last fight out of him, like something inside him had just given up, because Deshawn was right, and deep down, Reggie knew it. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't even a threat anymore. He was just a man who didn't know when to quit. And now he was paying for it. Dragged away like a nobody. The security guards swarmed him. Strong hands grabbed his arms, hauled him up. His legs buckled, his knees hit the ground. But they didn't care. They just dragged him forward, through the lobby, through the crowd of shocked onlookers, through the cameras, the phones, the dozens of recording eyes that were capturing every second of his downfall. And the worst part? Nobody was stopping them. Nobody was saying, "Let him go." Nobody was saying, "Come on, he's had enough." Nobody was saying, "That's Reggie Turner," because nobody cared anymore. He wasn't Mad Dog Turner. He wasn't a fighter. He wasn't a legend. He was just another washed-up nobody who thought he was tougher than he really was. And now, he was paying the price. The fall of a reputation. He barely heard what was being shouted. Something about trespassing, assault, destruction of property didn't matter. Nothing mattered. Because Reggie wasn't thinking about the cops, or the charges, or even what was going to happen when he got out. He was thinking about the videos. Because by morning, everyone was going to see them. Every sports page, every gossip site, the whole internet was going to be laughing at him. Not as a fighter, not as a legend, but as a cautionary tale, a joke. A legacy burned to ash. Reggie had lost fights before, but not like this. Not in front of 100 recording phones. Not with his entire reputation going up in flames. Not with Deshawn King standing over him like a statue, unshaken, undefeated, untouchable. This wasn't just a bad night. This wasn't just another loss. This was the death of the Mad Dog. And the worst part, nobody was ever going to forget it. What would you have done in Reggie's place? Would you have known when to walk away, or would you have kept pushing like he did? Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you, or someone you know, ever been in a situation where pride took over and led to serious consequences? Leave a like if this story made you think, and share it so more people can see where unchecked aggression can take you. This story wasn't made to glorify violence. It was made to shed light on a real issue and make the world a better place. Sometimes, true strength isn't in throwing punches, but in knowing when to stop.